Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Shana Tova. Shana Tova to everybody. A happy and healthy year. We have big stuff coming up tomorrow night. Is the high holidays. Yeah. So wait a minute. A few people are coming in. Nice to see everybody bright and early.
Boker Tov, Rabbi.
Boker Tov, Boker Tov.
Boker Tov, everybody.
Yeah. I'm just waiting for a few people to come here. Yeah. Shana Tova to everyone.
Shana Tova.
Well,
Wait another minute or two. A few more people. Okay, we're continuing our studies on the brachot, the daily prayers. So if you could take out your siddur, and we're going to look at the siddur. Take out your siddur, and the fifth blessing we're going to look today is at clothing the naked. So that's a important blessing. We're thankful to Hashem for giving us clothes. Every morning we wake up, amongst all the different things we thank Hashem. We thank Hashem when we wake up, when we get dressed. We thank Hashem for giving us clothes. And why is that such a thankful thing? Because if you don't have clothes, you're exposed to the weather, and you can be freezing in the winter, which is a lot of time in our neighborhood. And or you could be schwitzing in or you can be sunburned by the sun. So so that's the bracha. Malbish harum. If you give a look at the fifth blessing, they got the siddur here. We all have a siddur, right? Fifth blessing, and if you're following our Nuskari Siddur, page 6, it's Malbish Harumim, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth blessing on the page is dressing the naked. Now, today is just before Rosh Hashanah, so we could talk a little bit about clothing and being naked. We all know that what is Rosh Hashanah? What do we celebrate on Rosh Hashanah? Why is that the big day of the Jewish New Year? Because we believe that is the day of the creation of Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve were both created on the day of the first of Tishrei. Okay, if you look at the account of creation, it says the world was created in 6 days. And what day was Adam and Eve created? Adam and Eve was created on the 6th day of creation. First day was creation of light. The second day was the sky. The third day was vegetation. Fourth day was the sun and the moon and all the stars. And the fifth day was the animals. And some of the birds and the fish, and the animals and the humans were created on the 6th day. So on the 6th day, man was created. But when the human being was created, Adam and Eve, they were created like when you're born. When a child is born, they're not wearing clothes. They don't come out with a tie. The child comes out of the womb, the baby comes out. We call it the birthday suit. Baby. So Adam and Eve, when they were born, they were, so Rosh Hashanah, the reason why I mentioned it, Rosh Hashanah, is because Rosh Hashanah is the day of the creation of Adam and Eve. That's what we celebrate. We celebrate the 5,784th birthday of mankind. It's the first species of the human species. Adam and Eve was created so many years ago, and that was the day they were created. That's when we start counting the Jewish calendar. That's our new year. Now we don't count it from the day of the creation of the universe, which was on the first day of creation, but we start counting from the sixth day. Why do we start on the sixth? Because the epicenter, the whole purpose of creation was Adam and Eve, was mankind, was the human being who becomes a partner with God and can change the world for the good. But it's interesting, when Adam and Eve were created, it says they were created naked, without any clothing. It was only after the human being sinned, after the first sin, the Garden of Eden, we know that Adam and Eve, the snake, the serpent came and convinced Eve to touch and then eat the fruit on the tree of life, the tree of knowledge, which God told them not to. So they committed a crime, and then she gave it to her husband Adam, and he also committed the crime. He also sinned. And it was only after that, when God came to meet them, kicked them out of the garden, punished them, it's only around then that we see that it says that they realized and recognized that they were naked. Now, if you look very carefully at the wording of the Torah, nothing is a mistake. Every word in the Hebrew is of great value. It uses the word for nakedness twice in different contexts. It first says that Vahanachash, the serpent, Haya Arum, he was cunning. This cunning obviously led to the first sin, to the original sin of Adam and Eve. So the first time he uses the Hebrew word for nakedness is the same word for cunningness. It's an interesting sort of connection there. So it says that the serpent was naked, sort of naked in his wisdom, I guess, right? He was cunning. And that's what it says. Right after it says he was cunning, then it says he approached Eve, Chava, and he told her to eat from the tree, and Chava tells Adam, and they sin, and hence the whole story. They're kicked out of the Garden of Eden, etc., etc. But it all starts with that word arum. In Hebrew, the word arum. Notice the word, that's the word that's used in this bracha, that we say God clothes the naked. The word for naked in Hebrew is arum. But the first time the word arum appears is in the same story of Adam and Eve, where it says the serpent was cunning. And it was only after that cunningness sort of spread itself and it led to sin, one sin, another sin, sins of Eve and Adam, and they eat from the tree of knowledge. Does the Torah afterwards say, hey, and Adam and Eve, they realized their nakedness. Yadu ki arumim heim. They knew that they were naked. And it says they made some makeshift clothing. They took some of the leaves and they covered up their nakedness. I'm trying to show a parallel, a juxtaposition of these two things of the cunning that leads to sin and the nakedness. So Adam and Eve don't know the naked. They feel perfectly comfortable in their birthday suit, as they call it, right? They feel perfectly comfortable on Rosh Hashanah, just before Rosh Hashanah, that when they're created, on Rosh Hashanah itself, that's the day of creation. On the day of creation, they came into this world naked. Thank God nobody thought of that idea that everybody should come to shul like that, because that's the way we created. Baruch Hashem, nobody came up with that idea. But they were created on the day of their creation. They were without clothing. And remember that they weren't created as a baby. They were created as adults. So it's a scene. It's a major scene going on there in the Garden of Eden. It's like a nudist colony going on, right? And then what happens is the serpent approaches Adam and Eve, and he comes with his cunningness / nakedness. Okay, so when Adam is in his pristine state, in his perfect state, before sin, they don't realize that there is a nakedness. They don't realize that there is a possibility for sin. They're totally in a pure world, a pure, naive and pure. In that space comes the serpent and injects into them this nakedness, cunningness, and they sin, and now you can go against God's will. Suddenly they realize, hey, we are undressed. There suddenly is shame. There's embarrassment. There's embarrassment because humanity is now able to break away from God and do things which are not kosher and unholy. And at that moment, they realize they need to cover themselves up. So, like I said, in a perfect world, humanity could be in a state of nakedness. It's only after there becomes the guilt and the shame of sin, only after that does Adam and Eve realize how they're able to fall. And particularly with certain parts of the human being can be a source for major shame. That feeling of shame was infused into humanity. And it all comes from the serpent who is the source of that nakedness. He is the source of it because he is arum, he is cunning. Now, Adam and Eve, before that, they were brilliant. They were God's creations. But they were able to comprehend very well before they even ate from the tree of knowledge and broke God's will. They were good people. They were very smart, but they were not cunning. So we need to differentiate between smart and cunning. No problems come in this world from smart people. Problems come in this world from cunning people, conniving and cunning people. True academia doesn't make problems in this world. It's the cunning academia that make problems. It's the tricks and it's called irmumius. Same word in Hebrew as nakedness, right? So that's where big problems are developed in the world. And the downfall of man is associated with that cunning. Note the tree of knowledge, which they did not eat from before. It's not called the tree of knowledge. It's a misunderstanding. You have to read it in context. There was nothing wrong with knowledge. They had knowledge before. They had the deepest of ideas before. They didn't have the cunning, which leads to, it's called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Look carefully at the words. God doesn't have a problem if we eat fruits of knowledge. He has a problem when we become one with this good and evil. Right? It's an awareness and a shame and a guilt, and that whole aspect that comes from this deviousness that the human species can achieve. And it's, some people are brilliantly cunning, brilliantly devious. It's a brilliance too, but that's called the knowledge of good and evil. So the Eitz Hadas, the tree of knowledge, it's not intellectual pursuits. No. It's a certain department. The department that's led a little bit by the serpent. The serpent is a total extreme, the bad side of it, but it's a whole department, a department of coming up with trickster ideas, with coming up with cunning ideas, not sticking to what is right, what is truth, but Eitz Hadas Toiv Hara. And that's what they got caught up with. They ate from that fruit. And then suddenly Adam and Eve, they suddenly become, we're naked. What happened suddenly? Because they fell down a level from their purity that they had before. They came down to the real world, the world that we live in today, that we inherited from them, so to speak. Everything was they had to be kicked out of the Garden of Eden then, because now they came down to the lower level. What's the lower level? The level of cunning, of realizing your nakedness, of shame and guilt, and being uncomfortable with yourself, so to speak. Right? Adam and Eve were very comfortable with themselves when they were born, but then the venom of the snake, of the serpent, was infused into us, which led to the eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which gave man now a totally new level of free choice. You follow Rabbi say? You get what we're saying over here. So that's it. So when we say the bracha, Mal bisharumim, that Hashem dresses the naked. Okay. The dressing of the naked is what happened on Rosh Hashanah. But Hashem gives us now the ability that once we're down in that lower level, we're in a place where there is nakedness, where there is good and evil, in that space, Hashem gives us the ability to protect ourselves in that space against the serpents, against all of that. That's what the clothing is about. The clothing is the garments of the soul in a Kabbalistic world. There's the soul, there's the pure soul in its pristine form, which Hashem gives us, and that soul is pure. But then the soul is thrusted down to the world of good and evil. And now it needs to protect itself in this crazy world. It needs to protect itself. It needs to dress itself. For that, we have garments. That's why we thank Hashem every day for giving us the garments. Hashem gave us the ability, when we come down into this world, to deal with the world, elevate. And what are the garments in the spiritual world? The garments are the Torah and the mitzvahs. Kabbalah speaks about mitzvahs, particularly as being the levushim, the garments of the soul. So when a soul comes down here, it can't remain naked. Because like you said, if you remain naked here, you can't survive. You need in this physical world, you need to be constantly doing good deeds. And those good deeds is the counter to the negative influences of the serpent in this world, the negative influence of the cunning of the serpent in this world. You can't just say, okay, I'll just be natural. I'm going to open a nudist colony. No, it doesn't work in this world. You need to dress yourself, protect yourself. You're right now in the coldest places of Alaska, Siberia, and it's freezing. You can't say, well, I just want to be without God. No. Hashem tells you, I provide for you. You need to protect yourself against this world where there's the winds of good and evil. In a higher world, maybe you don't need the mitzvahs. That's why it says somewhere that when Mashiach comes, mitzvahs p'teilus l'asad lave. That when Mashiach comes, we'll go back to the original state. But as long as we're down here in this world, we need to elevate the world. I'll share with you another story about Rosh Hashanah. So this is a story of the Alter Rebbe, who was the founder of Chabad Lubavitch, and his son, the Mittel Rebbe, who eventually became the second Rebbe of Chabad. So when the Mittel Rebbe was younger, the Alter Rebbe was still Rebbe, and it was Rosh Hashanah. I guess it was afterwards by the meal. So they came back from shul. So the Alter Rebbe asked his son in Yiddish, he asked him, Mit was hast du gedavent? You davened the whole day today? With what did you daven? With what thoughts, so to speak? With what tool? With what aid did you daven? He says, I davened with the verse, Kol berach lecha tichra, every knee shall bow down to you. His son answered his father, the Mittel Rebbe answered his father, the Alter Rebbe. That's Reb Doiber, Reb Berel answers Reb Shnei Zalman of Liadi. He tells him, he says, Daddy, I prayed with the assistance of the verse that every knee shall bend down to you, and every standing person shall prostrate themselves. Total humility before Hashem. The Alter Rebbe says great. And the Mittel Rebbe asked his father, Daddy, what did you daven with? The Alter Rebbe says, I davened with my stender, my table. At the table that he was davening, in front of his chair, there was a table. But the people in the olden days, as many people today, they have a stender. A stender is like a lectern. Like a lot of shuls, they have it. People have their own lecterns. In Yiddish, it's called a stender. Stender. The Alter Rebbe said, I davened with my stender. So Chassidim explained, well, what do they mean? What do they mean? The Rebbe explained once in the early years. What does it mean? What did the Alter Rebbe mean by that? I prayed with my table. I prayed with. He said he prayed with some deep meditational insight. His son says, Father says, I dive into the table. But really, the Alter Rebbe was giving the key to Rosh Hashanah. As we said before, that Rosh Hashanah is all about being kicked out of the garden and being thrust into the physical world. And when we come into the physical world, our job is to elevate the stender. So the Alter Rebbe, when he was leaning on the lectern, or he was putting his siddur on the lectern, what was happening was the Alter Rebbe saw it was the world being transformed through mitzvahs, the world being transformed through prayer, the world being transformed through studying. And so he was able to see, he said, what did you daven with? I davened together with the physical world. I used the aid of the physical world. And I brought out that not just the human has to be totally submitted to Hashem, but even the lowest level of the world, which is the standard, which is made out of wood, metal, whatever, that too needs to be elevated. So Rosh Hashanah is a time that we meditate over that, how we used to be naked, we used to be pure, but now we come down to the world, and while our job in this world is through mitzvahs. Now the Kabbalists talk a lot about mitzvahs being garments. So you have three layers of the soul. You have the essence of the soul, layer one. It's not a layer, but that's the core of the soul, core, center of the soul. And then you have the faculties of the soul, like the intellect of the soul and the emotions of the soul. That's called, in Kabbalah, they speak about every soul has the spiritual DNA, the 10 attributes, which are intellectual, emotional. So the soul has personality. Every soul has a different personality. It's created with that personality. Even before it comes down to the world, it already has that second layer. But then there is a third layer. The third layer is the communicative abilities of the soul, how the soul interfaces. So that's the interface part of the soul. That's the third level of the soul. So you have the essence of the soul, which is pure and godly. You have the character of the soul, which are the faculties and the emotions and the intellect. Layer 2. Layer 3 is the tentacles of the soul, so to speak, how it interfaces with the world around it. So when it's in heaven, it interfaces with heaven. When it's down on earth, it interfaces with earth. And the Hasidus, we speak within the interfacing layer itself, there are 3 things which are important, there are 3 levels: thought, speech, and action. So thought is the first level, the most pure level of the interfacing. Thought is how you articulate your intellect and your emotions. You articulate it to the outside world. First, you start with thinking it and creating words in your mind. The next stage is speech. Speech is already a little bit more physical. It's already words that people can hear, and you interface on a more serious level. And then we have action. Action is how you create something as a result of that inspiration that you have. You interface with the world by doing something in a physical way in this world. So it's thought, speech, and action. Kabbalah says that is called, those are the garments of the soul. Because the garments don't really tell you much about the person. But we do say that garments make the man, clothing makes the man. So on the one hand, a garment is just an exterior thing, it's external. It's the farthest thing from the person themselves, but at the same time, it enhances and it beautifies the person, and it's their way of making a statement to the world around them. That's the garments, and that's in the spiritual level of thought, speech, and action. Now, when we say Hashem Malbish Harumim, he clothes the naked, he gives us clothing, garments. So we said, what are the garments? The garments are the mitzvahs, because mitzvahs happen on that external level. So although it's the most exterior thing where the mitzvahs are done, but in a way, it gives the soul an opportunity to grow in this world and to fulfill its mission here down on earth, and to give it the strength to be able to overcome all the winds, the negative winds of this world. Yeah, just give me 1 second over here. Eins Sekunde. Yeah, I'm in the middle of a nursery school here, so yeah, they had heard a little baby cry. I don't know if you were able to hear it there in the background. But Malbish Harumim, dressing those without clothing. I mean, it's like one of the biggest mitzvahs is to dress the homeless. You know, to dress people who don't have clothing. But what in the spiritual level, what is clothing? Clothing is the good deeds we are able to do, and that beautify and dress the person. We are told that when after a person passes away after 120, when they go to heaven, the soul arrives there in heaven all dressed with all the good deeds that the soul did in this world. So when a soul comes up there, it says that they're dressed with crowns. Crowns are also a form of clothing. And all the righteous and good people sit in the world to come dressed with all these crowns and garments and clothing. And that's what beautifies the person in the world to come. And on the flip side, if someone did not do good deed in this world, they didn't spend time doing, they come up there, they feel naked. And that, some people say, is what hell is all about. The the shame that the soul feels for not doing anything good in this world. So it comes up there and it feels naked, a sense of nakedness, because there are no mitzvot. They didn't do anything good in this world, so they come up there and they feel like everyone else is wearing some nice garments, and that this soul is now in a state of nakedness because they don't have those garments. I want to tell you a very interesting thing. I had a conversation a little while ago. I was a guest on a show, and because I wrote the book 7 Conversations with Jerry, so I was invited. Certain book, a certain show. It's an international show. It's on Zoom and other things, and they have thousands of people that join this. It's called Coach Menachem. That's the name of the show. And most of the show is people asking questions, like from the crowd. They ask the questions, and you have to answer them to the best of your ability. So I received some of the most difficult questions in the world. Imagine my subject of death and bereavement. Let me tell you, some of the most difficult. So there was one girl that told a story about how she was engaged to a guy, and he was diagnosed right after their engagement with a terrible, terrible illness, a cancer, nevach. And she nursed him for 2 years, took care of him. Then he passed away. So she felt like, how can I connect? Our whole experience was like a negative one, and the whole time he was sick, and we were never able to have a loving marriage. How can I connect to the soul? In the world to come, in heaven. I'm down here, the soul's up there. It's such a hurtful, painful relationship. I told her, I said, first of all, it's not hurtful, painful. You showed him the deepest love possible of a human being over those few years, that you were able to nurse him and tend to him and take care of him. I'm sure that's a great credit for you. But I want you to know that you're the soul of your loved one is now in heaven, and he is dressed with many beautiful garments, many crowns, and every one of those crowns have your name on it. The soul is crowned with all the people that he gave opportunities to do mitzvahs. Because while he was going through all that pain and suffering, that was giving his fiancée opportunities. And when she did good things for him, every one of those things was another crown for him. And he is up there, and he's thinking about her every second, because he is surrounded by all those good deeds she did for him, which are with him up there in the real world. Anyways, Hashem gave me this insight at that moment, and I said, wow, I was like amazed of the idea myself afterwards. And how Hashem gave me, and she says, wow, Rabbi, I never looked at it that way. And she suddenly felt such a great connection, because she gave the garments to his soul in the heaven. And so she remains with him forever and ever. So that was a thought tied into what we're talking about the garments and the crowns of the soul. So every morning we wake up in the morning, we thank God for giving us physical clothing to protect us from the elements of the world, to beautify us, to present us to the world, our garments. But more important even are the spiritual garments that we have. The garments that were introduced to us on Rosh Hashanah by Adam and Eve. The whole idea of clothing, that after Adam and Eve fell from their lofty level, a pure level of nakedness, and they suddenly realized their shame. It was at that moment God said, dress yourself and do mitzvahs in this world, to beautify yourself, to strengthen yourself, and most important, to fulfill your mission here down on earth by davening with the stender, davening with the table, elevating the physical world. So every time we put on a garment in the morning, think about all those things, all these ideas, and you'll never wear clothing again the same. You realize it's a whole different story. May Hashem wish ever give everybody may you be all written and inscribed in a happy, good year. The merit of all the Torah study we do throughout the whole year. May you all continue to study more. And as we said, the Torah and the mitzvahs, that's our purpose, and they beautify us and elevate us. So we should have a Shana Tova, a good and a sweet year. Sweet because it's going to be good, not just in the way that Hashem understands, but good way that we understand. But also, I think the idea of sweetness brings out, sweet is like wisdom. When you have beautiful ideas that we learn and study, it's matok, it's sweet. As we say every morning in the davening, we say in the brachas, we'll read later, it says, V'harevna Hashem. We ask Hashem, please make the Torah sweet for us. Because that is truly the greatest sweetness, is the sweetness of wisdom and the sweetness of Torah. So we merit to another happy, good, and sweet New Year. Shana Tova to everyone. Thank you. If anyone wants to ask any questions, you're welcome. Any questions? Anyone have a question?
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat shalom to everybody and Shana Tova. Should be a happy, peaceful new.
Thank you. Thank you.
Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year and good Shabbos.
Happy New Year to everyone.
See you
Thank you.
next week. Please God.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.